Well, it happened. After a little over a year of anticipation, it finally happened. George Santos was expelled from Congress by his peers. Okay, so this is one of the few times in U.S. history that this has ever happened. Usually, despite being problematic, a lawmaker will typically serve out their term until they are defeated in a subsequent election. There were exceptions made in the past for mostly, if I recall correctly, lawmakers who sided with the Confederacy and fighting against the Union and splitting the country in half. Insurrectionists, traitors. So those were the previous examples made, for the most part, for removing somebody from Congress by a vote. But, well, now we can chalk this one up to the list. Let's read here. GOP Representative George Santos of New York was expelled from the House in a bipartisan vote Friday, with dozens of his Republican colleagues joining Democrats in ousting him from Congress. Santos has been the center of overlapping scandals since he won election last year, and he faces a slew of federal charges related to alleged fraud and campaign finance violations. The explosive allegations were detailed in a pair of federal indictments handed down earlier this year, and the House Ethics Committee issued its own scathing report earlier this month. So, when this whole saga started, the main critique about Santos was that he is a pathological and compulsive liar. I don't think anybody is going to deny that. He's been caught in his lies multiple times. One of them, I remember when the reporting was first done on this, he lied and said that his grandparents or great-grandparents were victims of the Holocaust or Holocaust survivors. And then, to make it worse with that, he's running in New York where there are Holocaust survivors and their descendants living there and voting there. Then he claimed his mom died on 9/11, and then later made a statement about how she died of something else, so he completely contradicted himself and was exposed for that one. And we can go down the list. He was saying he graduated from universities where he never even enrolled as a freshman. And when called out on it, his usual response was, I embellished my record, or doesn't everybody just embellish their resume? And I don't like Mitt Romney. I don't like neocons, but Mitt Romney had the best comeback to that. He said, embellishment is when you say you got an A when you got an A minus. He said, flat out lying is when you say you graduated from a university that you never even attended. So that kind of sums up this clown pretty well. Soon after Santos won a surprising victory in the 2022 midterm elections, media outlets began uncovering a multitude of lies he told about his life story, kicking off months of public scrutiny of his background. Well, yeah, usually when you get caught in one lie, the people looking into you are going to dig further and see what else you lied about. And as we could tell from this story, he lied about quite a bit. Pretty much his entire life story and list of, accomplishments that would make him qualified to be a lawmaker were all fabricated. And it's not just the lying part. Obviously, that's what got this rolling. That's what made him a semi-household name, at least last year and most of this year. But it's not just the, lying about your record or lying about your family. That is reprehensible. You're aspiring to be a representative of the people of that district. I mean, I'd like to believe that every district deserves an honest representative. I couldn't finish that. Yeah, we're going to pretend that he's the only representative that lied about their background or their record. Give me a break. I could think of like 10 examples off the top of my head. But the real problem in my mind are the criminal indictments. Now, if you lie about yourself to get a job, wow, that's like breaking news. That's never happened before. I'm sure bosses worldwide would rush to look at that data sample of a person lying on their resume or lying during an interview. Come on. People do that shit all the time. It doesn't make it right, but if we're going to start talking about expelling people for lying or committing certain crimes, we might want to start investigating pretty much every sitting member of Congress, barring a few notable exceptions. And even they, I would still want everybody looked into in terms of if we're going down that rabbit hole of we're going to start looking into people in this body for lying and for screwing people over. Well, that's going to be almost all of them. Do we need to remember 2020? All of these people got paid their full salaries while hundreds of thousands, if not more, Americans all over the country were being laid off, living in fear, being told to stay inside, can't leave their home. Meanwhile, while the economy took a major dump, every single person in that Capitol building kept their salary. And some of them decided it was a good idea to gloat to the American people who were reeling and suffering at the time how much money they spend on refrigerators and their ice cream collection. Yeah, that wasn't ridiculous and tone deaf at all, but it's not criminal, so whatever. Bad optics. I'm not bringing it up to defend George Santos. I'm bringing it up because if we're really going to start looking into people and looking to clean house in Congress to get, ethical and, honest people elected, well then you didn't solve that problem by just getting rid of George Santos. I hate to tell you. I hate to break that bad news. You've got quite a few rotten apples in that lot when it comes to lying and fraud. In October, prosecutors hit Santos with an additional 10 counts that accused him of conspiracy to commit offenses against the U.S., wire fraud, making false statements to the Federal Election Commission, falsifying records, aggravated identity theft, and access device fraud. Okay, identity theft, like I said, the criminal indictments here are what I think, disqualify him from remaining a lawmaker in the United States House of Representatives. The lying is bad. Yeah, it's really bad to scam people out of their vote by painting yourself as a completely different person than you actually are to attract their vote. He did it very brazenly, but let's keep it real. Almost every politician sells a fake version of themselves on the campaign trail to get elected because in the case of especially U.S. senators, they don't have to worry about campaigning again for another 4 to 6 years. Their term ends in 6. Whereas members of the House, it's every 2 years. So, we're having a serious conversation right now about, oh, he lied, therefore he's bad. Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't lie to get a position. You should get a position based on your merits, or in the case of being a lawmaker, your merits and your dedication and commitment and willingness to serve the people of your district. But that's not the world we live in. A lot of these people go into it just to get rich, to get a lot of connections, and then when they get out of that held office, those connections give them a lobbying position where they can charge hundreds of thousands of dollars for public events, campaign events, and all of that. They get richer after their tenure in Congress than they did during it. Now, you have some that, in Congress, they'll write a book, or they will, they have a loved one that's in the stock market or is a stock investor. We all know who I'm thinking about there. And they use the inner mechanisms of the very corrupt and filthy machine to enrich themselves. So like I said, I'm not defending him. I'm glad he's out. I don't like people defrauding others to enrich themselves. I'm just not a fan. I'm a fan of do it the old school way. Work hard, get an education, hone your skills, do something to do right by yourself, but to not screw over other people in the process. Let's look at these charges. Conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States. 2 counts of wire fraud. 2 counts of making materially false statements to the Federal Election Commission. Yeah, rule of thumb, if you're being investigated for fraud or for, finance crimes, election fraud, or anything like that, it would be a really good idea to not lie to the people that are questioning you as part of their investigation. 2 counts of falsifying records submitted to obstruct the FEC. 2 counts of aggravated identity theft. I'd love to learn a little more about that. That's a yikes. 1 count of access device fraud. 7 counts of wire fraud, Watergate 2.0. 3 counts of money laundering. 1 count of theft of public funds. Yeah, that was another one. He was using campaign money to go get have, what was it, spa days or something like that. He was spending campaign money. He's definitely guilty. It has to be proven in court, of course, but there's almost no question that he's guilty of campaign finance law violations, because he was using campaign funds to get expensive playthings. I think he got like a Rolex or something. He was getting expensive playthings for himself with money that people gave in good faith, hoping it was going to be used for, campaigning. Then we have here the House Ethics Committee report, and we get to the meat of it right here. The final, at the end of it, the resolution when he's finally expelled. They had 2 prior attempts that didn't work, but then as more of this evidence came out, you had more in the GOP willing to vote against him, willing to vote to kick him out. House lawmakers voted for a 3rd time on a resolution to remove Santos from Congress on Friday. The first 2 attempts came before the Ethics Committee released its report, and several more Republicans indicated they would now support ousting him given the panel's findings. For his part, Santos had said he would not seek re-election, but remain defiant. So in other words, yeah, I know, he's thinking, there's no way I'm going to win, term 2, but I'm not going to let them throw me out before term 1 is over. Give me a break, dude. You're not entitled to that seat. If you get in there on false pretenses and then you commit all these financial crimes in the process of getting to that spot, how are you surprised that even your own team turned on you to get you out of there? I know a lot of, if he happens to ever watch this, which I doubt, I know a lot of your colleagues were corrupt in there. We all know that. We know they lie through their teeth, Republican and Democrat alike. A lot of them are there to just enrich themselves and their families, screw over the citizens and the taxpayers, and then retire in their luxury mansions, looking down their nose at everybody else. But you're not supposed to, make it obvious that you're a crook. You're supposed to hide it. And it doesn't look like he did a very good job at hiding any of it. Now, in my mind, yeah, get him out of there. I don't want people committing like fraud, wire fraud, campaign finance law violations, wire fraud. Not Watergate, that joke earlier, I meant wire fraud, like money, but like wire, anyway. 2 counts of making material, just a bunch of lying and just criminal activity. He walked out of the House chamber before the end of Friday's vote. His expulsion takes effect immediately. Well, bozo, if you didn't want to get expelled, you shouldn't have been doing all of this just tomfoolery to use a, non-swearing word to describe this. I'm actually at a loss for words that it took this long. I mean, like I started at the beginning with, I in no way defend anything he did, and I don't think he still deserves to be there. But I also think this same standard should be held for other lawmakers who also lied to get where they are and have only used their position for decades to enrich themselves and their friends. But that's an idealistic take. We don't really live in that world. So at the end of the day, this was a scenario of a liar being called out and expelled by other liars. Thank you for watching, and if you think this guy is a big fat liar like I do, please let me know in the comments below and make sure to like and subscribe. It helps the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.